Hello, everyone. Today we're here to talk about Myrotvorets website and Kim Poplavsky's film about Faina Savenkova, which is called Don't Be Silent, the story of Faina Savenkova. You probably have seen this movie. Maybe somebody hasn't, well, then you definitely should. The most important thing is that film is telling us a story of the confrontation between a little girl and the nationalist website, Myrotvorets. And today, our guest is a journalist, an American analyst, John Varoli. Welcome. And of course, Faina, also a journalist, a writer, and the author of the idea of this film. Faina Savenkova.
Всем привет, очень рада всех видеть. Спасибо огромное, что согласились на этот разговор о фильме и сайте Myrotvorets.
Well, hello everyone. It's great to see you here. Thank you for finding the time to have this meeting and to talk about Myrotvorets with us. So our questions to John. You have lived in Russia for a long time, and you have a lot of things that are connecting you to Russia. So, question to you, why is there such huge Russophobia in the West towards Russians, in your opinion?
Just real quick, to answer that question effectively, I just have to tell about myself real quick. So I graduated in 1990 from Cornell University as an expert in U.S. foreign policy and in Soviet studies. So I was trained as an expert in the Soviet Union, obviously to go and work in the government like my father. And ideally, I would love to have been an ambassador to the Soviet Union. But as we know, in 1991, the Soviet Union ended and we had no jobs. I mean, my group, there was just no jobs for us. And so I went to Russia. Well, first I went to Belgium, then I went to Czechoslovakia. And by June 92, I moved to Moscow. And I stayed for over 20 years. And for 15 of those 20 years, I was a foreign correspondent for major media, the New York Times, Bloomberg, and Reuters TV. And for 5 years, and then as well, I was also involved, had my own PR agency. After that, I left journalism in 2010 and started my own PR agency. And then I moved back to the US in, well, first I went, after Russia, went back to Prague, to Czechoslovakia. And then after that, by summer 2014, I was back in the US. Now, this is very important. So as we know, the conflict begins in Ukraine. And I, at this time, I'm absolutely not involved in politics. I have my PR agency. I'm not a journalist, but I'm working with journalists. I'm working with all the top media and all the top journalists in the Anglo-Saxon world, English-speaking world. And I just said something which I thought was like harmless. I said, this is terrible. We should not be bombing Donbass. And I say we because I know it was America. I know the White House was behind it. I mean, I come from a U.S. government family. I know how things work there. I know that our vassals, our protectorates, if Ukraine is an American protectorate, they do not act unless they have permission from the U.S. So I knew right away it was America who gave the order to bomb Donbass. And I said, I'm against this. I don't like it. I was attacked. I was just attacked by all my colleagues, family, friends. Shut up. You don't know anything. Really, I don't know anything. I think, killing women and children, I think it's bad. I don't understand what the problem is here. Why I don't think it should even be discussed. But I was so shocked by this reaction, this negative reaction, that I did shut up. I did shut up. I said, okay, this is not my problem. It's not my issue. I have a business to take care of. And I began with my business. And so my business was a PR agency, mostly specializing in culture, philanthropy, and also technology, IT companies. So absolutely nothing to do with politics. So I was working with Russian clients, Ukrainian clients, and Belarusian. But I was living in the US now. Now I'm living in the US. And I saw, you could see the hatred. You could just see the hatred. And this is what's interesting. You talk about, we want to talk about Russophobia. It's not, it is, Russophobia, it's like the state religion. It's like the de facto state religion in the US to hate Russia. It just is. That's just the way it is. Why? I'll answer that question in a second. But you know what? It's even worse. It's Slavophobia. Our elite, they hate everybody. They hate all Slavs. They hate Poles. They hate Ukrainians. They hate Belarusians. And of course, they hate Russians. So when I see the Poles and the Ukrainians supporting Uncle Sam, I'm thinking, you people are stupid. You people are really stupid because they hate you just as much. And they would love to see Poland destroyed, the Polish nation destroyed. Of course, they want to see the Ukrainian nation destroyed. They're willing to fight to the last Ukrainian. They're willing to see all the Ukrainians slaughtered in this senseless war. This war obviously could have been avoided. It could have been easily avoided. Don't expand NATO eastward. Everybody knew that. We, the experts, and I want to say, yes, I'm one of the few American experts on Ukraine and Russia, like truly experts, independent experts. You're talking like 20, 30 people. And none of us have any influence today. None of us. We have been prevented from getting any influence. We're not allowed on major TV channels. We're not allowed near the corridors of power in Washington. Even look at someone like our friend Scott Ritter, right? Brilliant man, knows the situation very well, and Washington ignores him. I mean, he's doing a great job trying to get his message through, but of course, nobody invites him to the White House. Nobody invites him to speak before Congress, and they should, and they really should. Okay, but now to answer your question, the origins of Russophobia. Let's go back to the early 1990s. So when I arrived in Moscow, I'm going to tell you things that I've never told anybody before. So I was working in the very beginning. I was working with American Protestants. We were helping homeless people in Moscow in the early 90s. And I'm Catholic, but they were American. I'm American, so we worked together. And I noticed that the American Protestants, they hate the Orthodox Church.
Why?
And I'm thinking, like guys, like, what's your problem? We're all Christian. I'm Catholic. You're Protestant. And Russia, yes, Russia has a 1,000-year-old Orthodox Church. John, they're heretics. They always say, John, you don't understand. I don't understand. Oh, of course, I don't understand. John, they're heretics. Those Orthodox, they're heretics. I said, no, they're Christians just like we are. We're all Christians. We're all God's children. What's the problem? Nope. American Protestants, and these are the worst American Protestants. These are evangelicals, Baptists. They're fanatics. They're extremists. They're dangerous fanatics. And I mean, obviously, I obviously parted ways with them, but I still was in their circle. I mean, because it was a small American community, actually not that small in the early 90s. So I was in contact with them. I learned a lot about them. I had never, what's interesting? I had never had any contact with them when I lived in America. I only met these people when I was in Russia. And I began to understand how racist they are, how bigoted and hateful they are. No, for them, their extremist interpretation of the Bible, that's it. And they don't want to consider, they hate Catholics, they hate Orthodox. Do you know why they hate? And they hate Russia. Actually, they just hate Russia. Do you know why? Do you know why they hate Russia?
Why?
Because there's one phrase in the Bible that they found, and they interpret this one phrase about Gog and Magog. And so the American radical Protestants, they interpret this to mean Russia. It's a land of the north. It is literally one sentence in the Old Testament. And these radical American Protestants say that's Russia. Look, the Bible is speaking about Russia. And I'm thinking, damn, you people are mad. You people are insane. You are insane. Okay, here's where it gets really scary. This new team with Trump, a lot of them are radical American Protestants. And they believe that Russia is the enemy. No, the enemy of God. They see this in sort of some apocalyptic manner. And actually, I could almost agree with them. Yes, we are pretty much in an apocalypse. Yeah, we are. But guys, you have it wrong. Russia's the good guys. Russia, they're the good guys. The bad guys are in Washington, D.C. The bad guys are in the corridors of power in Washington, on Wall Street, the financial oligarchs in New York City. That's the source of evil. It's not Russia. So they have this backward, inverted way of viewing reality, simply because, can you believe it? Because they've taken one sentence from the Old Testament and they've entirely distorted it and misread it. Okay, so that's one group. So you have the radical American Protestants who unfortunately have a lot of power in Washington, D.C., a lot of power. Now, so I told you, so we were working with the homeless people in Moscow in the 90s, and I had a small charity. And this is very important now, my single biggest source of financing, $10,000. That $10,000 helped us work for 4 years. It was Moscow 1990s. $10,000 went a long way. It came from a Jewish foundation. And they said, oh, John's doing social work. He's helping out homeless people in Moscow. Let's give him money. I said, thank you. So when I came back to New York in summer 94, right? Because I moved to Moscow in June 92. Summer 94, I finally met them for the first time. Nice Jewish couple. And you know what they said to me? They say, John, you're doing great work helping people, but don't forget, John, Russia is the enemy. I'm like, what? This is summer 94. I mean, the Cold War is over. It's over, guys. What do you mean Russia's the enemy? And they just said, John, just remember, Russia's the enemy. And I was so shocked. This actually began a very long relationship that I've had with the Jewish community in New York City and in Moscow, by the way, and in St. Petersburg, of course. I lived in St. Petersburg as well. So I worked very closely from the early 90s until 2022, until February 2022. I worked very close with the Jewish community. Like I said, I was a journalist. I worked for New York Times. I worked for Bloomberg. And then with my PR agency, a lot of my clients were Jewish. And I always had great relations with them. But I noticed they just hate Russia. And I'm like, guys, why do you hate Russia so much? Oh, they talk about the pogroms that happened 150 years ago or 130 years ago. I'm like, you talk about the pogroms in Russia, but you never talk about Nazi Germany and the Holocaust. Like they're more obsessed with pogroms that happened 130 years ago than they are with the Holocaust that happened in Nazi Germany 80 years ago. And it's just, I think it is most of the case. We have to divide the Jewish community into radical liberals and religious Jewish people. And I think religious Jewish people tend to be adequate towards Russia. But the liberal Jewish community, they have the stronger hatred of Russia. And I think it has to do with the orthodoxy of Christianity. I think they just hate Christianity and they hate orthodoxy. They hate Russian orthodoxy. So you see, it comes back to the American radical Protestants hate Russian orthodoxy. Liberal Jewish community tend to hate Russian orthodoxy. So, it's like, this is really strange coincidence here. We see a pattern. So why do they hate orthodoxy? I love your faith. I love the Russian faith. I love going to Russian churches. It's like, why do you hate it so much? I don't have an answer. I'd have to have about this. I do have an answer, but it's already going to be in the area of spirituality. I think this is just a conflict of good and evil. And I've begun to understand that the Russian Orthodox Church is the true Christian church. It is the true Christian church. It is the true Christian faith. And like, I'm this close to becoming Russian Orthodox myself. I think when I come to Russia, I'm probably going to, get baptized in the Russian church. When I see how much people here hate your church, I think, you know what? Your church must be doing something right. It must be the true church, because otherwise they wouldn't hate it so much. Okay, I'm sorry, I talked a lot. I'll stop on that.
We are joined by Johnny Miller. Hello, Johnny. Also a British journalist, and also a participant of that movie about Faina, Don't Be Silent, the story of Faina Savenkova. Welcome. Thank you for finding the time for joining us. Now, John, the next question to you. Have you seen the movie Don't Be Silent, the story of Faina Savenkova yourself? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw it. I watched it. Somebody sent it to me. Yeah, so it was very good. Very much enjoyed it. Yeah.
Good. John, and you?
Twice.
Awesome.
Twice.
So, question to you both. What do you think about the film? What did you like about it? What you didn't like about it, maybe, if there is anything? How necessary and important it is for the Western audience to see it?
Yeah, I think the film's fantastic. It's really good. It tells our story. It's very well filmed, and I think the story is so important. It's not just because of Myrotvorets. It's because there is a targeted campaign from Ukraine and NATO countries to silence any criticism of the Ukrainian nationalists and indeed NATO policy on the war. I mean, from a British or European perspective, this war was so clearly not in British or European interests. The British European economies are being hugely damaged because of it, and they knew that. The British government, the European governments knew that supporting Ukraine rather than peace talks in Ukraine was going to damage the British and European economies. What they should have known is they had a very small chance of defeating Russia. It was almost impossible. So you've had this disastrous foreign policy decision making, and almost nobody in Ukraine and indeed in Britain and in Europe. You have a bit more criticism in America because Republicans under Trump, etc., a lot more critical of the policies, but particularly in Britain and Europe, almost nobody. I mean, I'm talking academics, mainstream journalists, politicians, over 600 politicians in the British Parliament. I don't think any one of them has really spoken up. Academics at universities in Oxford and Cambridge. It's like watching the entire intelligentsia of Britain and Europe stay silent while Britain and Europe do so much damage to themselves with these destructive policies. And how does that happen? How does that happen? The reason is because, and just like in Ukraine, of course, in Ukraine, if you stand up against the Ukrainian nationalists, you may well be killed, and some people have been killed. And that's what Myrotvorets is all about. And it's also, that's why I say it's also NATO policy, because why has nobody spoken out? Because they know they'll lose their jobs. If they work in journalism or academia or in politics, you'll be smeared as a Kremlin asset. And as I say, if you do that in Ukraine, there's a good chance you'll be jailed or become enough of a threat, and you can be killed. And so Myrotvorets is very much just the tip of the iceberg in the strategy of silencing any kind of criticism of NATO and Ukrainian policy. And that's the reason it's left up. It's crazy. In Russia, it would be illegal. It would be illegal to have such a website. I expect in the United States and in Britain, it would be illegal. You can't have an extremist website that publishes the names and addresses of children, of anybody actually, particularly of children, and promotes violence against them. It's crazy.
How then can it be legal from the European legislation standpoint?
Because it's Ukraine, and because it's the Ukrainian ultra-nationalists who are doing it, and the Ukrainian ultra-nationalists are integral to NATO's policy of provoking Russia. Without most Ukrainians, the vast majority of Ukrainians, they never wanted war with Russia. They wanted peace in the end of the civil war. They wanted peace in Donbass. That's why Zelensky was elected, to make peace in Donbass. Because Ukrainians wanted peace, but it's the extremists. It's the, when Russia says they want to denazify Ukraine, there are Nazis there. I don't call them Nazis, although there are lots of them. But these ultra-nationalist extremists, they are integral to Western strategy of provoking Russia, because they're the ones who ideologically hate Russia. And they're the ones who want to carry on the war in Donbass and will continue to fight. That's why they've allowed this website to stay up as well, because they want to appease the extremism in Ukraine. The extremism in Ukraine is essential to carry out NATO policy.
So the answer is that it's because it is Ukraine. However, there are nationals of many different countries listed on this website. You are there as a Brit. I am there as a Russian. Everybody's there who's American, French, you name it. All countries are represented there. How come that no one is protected?
Well, I mean, these people are extremists. You have to realize that. I mean, I've covered extremism quite a bit around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Syria, ISIS. I mean, they are the Nazis of the Middle East, really evil people. And these people who put this up, they are extremists. They don't think like you or me. That's how you put journalists and children on a website like that. These people are extreme. They don't think right. And so that's why they do it. And as I say, why it's allowed up. Because to acquiesce to these extremists. Extremists are useful. The Americans used extremists in Afghanistan in the 80s. They used extremists in Syria now and over the last 10 years. Extremists are very useful in carrying out policy. So that's why it's up. And I think for most people, Americans, Brits, I don't think they have to worry too much, I think. I mean, there's some alternative journalists in America. It's quite hard to kill them. But if you're Russian, if you're Ukrainian, or like you guys, then being on the list, it really is a serious thing.
My next question is to John Varoli. So there is no protection from European governments or US governments or anyone in that regard. But do you think there is a way that a person can actually protect his name from those accusations that are made by Myrotvorets website and by these intelligence agencies of Ukraine against the people? Is there a way to protect yourself or not?
Well, probably not, but we have to be very clear. And I think your film made this very clear. I think it was George who did a lot of the research, and he traced Myrotvorets back to connections in Washington, in the US. That at the end of the day, it is the US Secret Service, the CIA, is behind this, or they're encouraging it, they're financing it, they're giving support to it. That's what I understand, and that sounds probable. Well, listen, we know that the Ukrainian regime is a puppet regime of the US, okay? So if the US would today stop supporting the Kiev regime, that's it. It would collapse within days, and Myrotvorets would be shut down within hours, right? So we have to understand, we all know very clearly, but we all know this, but let's state very clearly. This is entirely an American project. At the end of the day, it's an American project. And they feel they can do this. They feel they can go after people like Faina and journalists and children and activists because they know that Uncle Sam is behind them. If Uncle Sam suddenly said, if Trump, you better do this. You better get off your ass and you better do this. I want you to say, Mr. Trump, I want you to say, that's it. We're sick of the Kiev regime. We're shutting everything down. And by the way, you know what? We're going to join Russia. And we're going to work together with Russia to destroy you, Kiev regime. That's what Donald Trump should say. If he wants to fight the deep state, that's what he's got to say. Not just that he's against the Kiev regime and he's going to join Russia. We're going to work with Russia to kick their ass. That's what he's got to say. Because if he does not do that, then I don't believe a word he says about fighting the deep state, because the deep state is all about obviously fighting Russia, as we know. So I want to add, Johnny, excellent comment as always. I really love hearing from you. I just want to add one thing, which again, we all know this is true, but I just want to state it, that why do they have this website? Why did this website of intimidation? Because if there was free speech, if there will be truly free speech, they can't win the argument. And they know that. They know that we win the argument. If there's free speech, we win the argument every damn time. That's why they have to frighten us, intimidate us, threaten us, and sadly, as we know, they've killed people. Because they cannot handle. If there was freedom, truly freedom, they couldn't stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So Faina has participated in creation of this film.
Please tell us in brief what this film is about. Why do you think the Western audience should see it? The idea of this film appeared in 2023 when we just met with its future director, Klim Poplavsky. Back at the day, I did not think that the idea will come to life so fast, but it all happened, and this movie appeared. This is my story, how I grew as a writer, as a public figure, and about my fight with Myrotvorets. You are taking part in this fight since 2021, almost 4 years now. How far did you go? What did you achieve? And what would you hope to achieve in the end? In this movie and earlier in the press, I spoke a lot about how difficult this fight is. The problem is not just that Western agencies help this site, but also because famous people who are there on the website, they do nothing to punish this site. At least they could maybe do some class action against it, or somehow financially punish it. They could do something like that, but they don't. But the work continues, and thanks to George Ellison and others, the film is telling about who's behind that project. That's already a big achievement.
Have you received any threats since the film appeared?
In principle, nothing changed much. I had threats before, I have threats now, but globally nothing changed.
Johnny Miller, and how's about you? You are on this side also for quite a while. Do you have any threats that you know originated from being there on Myrotvorets?
Not from being on Myrotvorets, but I've after my it's over a year ago now, after my working in Crimea, my phones were hacked. They threatened my girlfriend, threatened to kill me. They deleted all my messages. I've had my private documents released online by major X accounts, letters I've written to the Russian government, perfectly normal stuff as a journalist. So they hacked my phones, they release my private documents, they delete my entire history with my girlfriend, send me death threats from her account. And I've had much more serious stuff in Moscow when they let me know exactly where I am and where I'll be. Really serious stuff, which I don't even think it's Ukraine. I think it may even be British or American, but hardcore stuff that to silence my work. Myrotvorets was only the start for me. But then it's got much more serious. And now I'm not sure if I can return to the UK. I think I have to stay in Russia.
Ну, сказала, что думаете о фильме.
Faina's question is very personal. What do you think about the movie?
Yeah, it's really good. I thought the filmmaking was good. I thought the storytelling was good. You know, as I said, who was on it? George was on. I've never met George, but I've spoken to him. I think he seems to have done a great job. Christelle, who I know were a French journalist in Donbass, she's a really good, very dedicated journalist. So it was good to see her on it. And yeah, I think it was good storytelling and yeah, really good film. Yeah.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you. John, what do you say?
Yeah, it was a great film. It was very good for me to learn to get to know you better, Faina, to learn more about your life and where you live and what you went through. Because as you know, we met once in St. Petersburg, and but now I really feel like I understand who you are as a person, as an activist, as a writer, and then in terms of the information that was presented, it was really excellent. As was just said, excellent comments from George, from Johnny, and the others that really helped me to better understand the situation. I have to say, really, especially his research was very crucial for us to understand that at the end of the day, surprise, surprise, the CIA is behind this project. But it was good to hear. It was good. We suspected that, of course, but now it's good to have that confirmed by the excellent research that George did. My comment might be I was just wondering, maybe it makes sense to make a shorter version, maybe a 30-minute version, a 25-minute version, because sometimes it's just easier for people to digest. This was a rare time when I watched a film in its entirety, a 1-hour film. Usually a 1-hour film I will not watch to its entirety. A lot of people, we don't have time. So my one suggestion might be is perhaps you can do another cut, a shorter cut, 25, 30 minutes. Perhaps that could be helpful in reaching even a wider audience, because again, I'm just not sure if everyone will watch it to the end. I mean, that's not concerning your film, but any film. I don't think many people will watch any film that's 1 hour to the end.
So it's 2 minutes. It's people's attention span now. It's 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Могу предложить режиссеру, почему бы и нет?
Yeah, we could suggest it to the director, because why not?
Yeah.
Да.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Okay, nice to see you guys.
Right.
Great to meet you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good to meet you, John. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Take
Thank you
care.
very
Take
much.
care. Be well.
Спасибо.
Be well. Be safe. Take
Ладно.
care. Bye-bye.
I'm here for you.
Здравствуйте. Спасибо, что нашли время с нами поговорить. Сегодня я бы хотела поговорить о сайте Миротворец, поскольку недавно был снят фильм обо мне и этом сайте.
Thank you very much for finding time to join us to talk about Myrotvorets, because just recently there was a movie made about Faina and this website. Scott, you are on the Myrotvorets website. You have been there for quite a long time. How does this affect your life? How much do you have to take care of your personal safety? How dangerous it is to be there on this website?
I live in the United States, and so it would be quite the stretch for the Ukrainian government to try and assassinate an American on American soil. Having said that, just down the road is a camp belonging to the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, where they openly worship Stepan Bandera. And so Ukrainian nationalists live amongst us here in America. And one has to always keep in the back of their minds the possibility, the potential of something happening. I have dogs, and they're very protective. So if anybody tries to make an approach to my house, whether it be a mailman, a friend, or an assassin, the dogs will warn me. And I do take basic precautions. But as I said, I'm an American, and I live in the United States. And so my worries aren't nearly the same as Faina. The other thing is I'm an adult. War is an adult's game. Assassination is an adult's game. Faina was put on this list as a child, an innocent. simply for asking questions that any normal child would ask. So what happens to me is nothing compared to the life that she's lived in the changes she's had to make to her life and the threats that she lives under. So I wouldn't want to make any comparison between the two. The impact of being on the Myrotvorets list for me, it's academic. It's a curiosity. For Faina, it's a matter of life and death.
According to George Ellison, the Bellingcat organization and Elliot Higgins and Andrew Aaron Wisborne participated in creation and operation of this website. In your opinion, is the Myrotvorets a website for intimidating people, or is it a website for collecting information about people and then it is followed by discrediting of these people, or, like you said, preparing murders of these people? What do you think?
I think the Myrotvorets website serves all three purposes. It's a site that's designed to intimidate people, putting them on the. It's designed to discredit them. The information contained on the site almost always casts the person that has been targeted in a negative way. And we know that people on the website have been targeted for murder, for assassination. Daria Dugina is perhaps the highest profile, Tatarsky, and others. So we know it's not a false equivalency to call it a kill list because people on the list have been killed. But I think from this perspective of an American or a non-Ukrainian, non-Russian, the list is to intimidate and to discredit. That's their principal purpose of doing this.
Do you think there's anything that the person who is there, whose data is there anything that he can do to protect himself? What would be your recommendation to a person when he finds himself on this website?
I mean, there's several perspectives here. If I were Russian, I would, of course, reach out to my government and see what my government's assessment of the Myrotvorets hit site is. Does my government take it seriously? And if my government doesn't take it seriously, then I would do everything possible to make sure that my government did take it seriously and provided the appropriate protections for Russian citizens whose names appear on this list. And if my government does take it seriously, then I would ask the government, what measures should I take? How will the government assist me in doing, in protecting myself? But also understanding this is very real. I mean, now we get to the degree of how do you value life and what is life? These are value judgments. You can go into hiding, but then life is really over at that point in time. You can live free of worry and expose yourself to risk unnecessarily. Or you can find the appropriate balance between living your life, doing the things you want to do, and being secure as possible. We live in a cruel world, and in this world there are no guarantees, least of all for life. We can die in many different ways: in a car accident, in a train accident, bad food, slipping on the ice.
The person is suddenly mortal, yes.
Right, it's just that quick, life goes away. And so the one thing that strikes me every time I speak of people who have had a near-death experience or have a loved one who suddenly died of cancer is, in fact, I went to a funeral just the other day with a good friend of the family's, and she, her mother had passed from cancer. And she looked in my eyes and said, what this taught me is I have to live for the moment. I have to live now. You see, she has the same genes that her mother has that make her susceptible to cancer. Is she going to live in fear? Is she going to have unnecessary medical procedures? Or is she going to say, I've been blessed with life, so every day I will live my life to the fullest? And I think that's the approach. There are no guarantees. Now you get somebody like Faina, who was put on this list not by accident, but by advocating that which she believed in. Her life is this mission she has taken to defend the people of the Donbass, to speak out about the wrongs perpetrated. She dies if she stops doing that. Yes, her body may live, but her soul, her spirit dies. Who she is dies. Faina, my advice would be to live your life, to do what you're doing, to keep doing what you're doing. Not to be foolish, not to take unnecessary risks, but to never once let the enemy, let the opponents, let those who made this horrible kill list intimidate you into being something other than what you want to be.
Спасибо огромное. Правда, это очень хороший ответ.
Thank you so much for this answer. Faina says also that this is a fantastic answer to that question. Do you think it is possible to close this website using the American law legally? And if yes, then why don't the American authorities do this? Okay, they don't care about Russians or Ukrainians, but maybe they care about you, about Americans that are there on this website.
They don't care about me. I'm on the website because they want me to be on the website. I'm on the website because the U.S. government has said it's okay for me to be on the website and everybody else whose name's on the website as well. We know that the State Department and the FBI, the Department of Justice here in the United States, actively work with the Ukrainian government to intimidate, to discredit American voices that have spoken out against America's policy in Ukraine, spoken out against the policies of the Ukrainian government. My passport was taken from me because the Ukrainian government asked the United States to take my passport. The FBI came to my house because the Ukrainian government asked the United States to intimidate me. If they're willing to do that, they're willing to violate the Constitution. If they're willing to violate the Constitution, then they're willing to do anything and everything, to include kill me. The only good news here is that they also targeted President Trump, and they targeted Tulsi Gabbard, and they targeted other people who are now in a position to be politically powerful. And I think this victory of President Trump in the election will create a new environment in Washington, D.C., where the rights of Americans will be respected, especially when it comes to the abuses of power undertaken by the FBI and the Department of Justice. This is personal for Donald Trump. The FBI raided his house, violated his privacy, all on false charges that were set up by the Ukrainians and others. So I believe for the first time, once President Trump is sworn in, that we have an opportunity in the United States to behave in accordance with the rule of law, to do the right thing in terms of protecting Americans from abuses by American law enforcement and judicial authorities who are operating not in defense of the Constitution, but at the behest of a foreign government dominated by nationalists whose loyalty is to an ideology linked to Nazi Germany.
Do you think when Trump becomes the president, well, again, he will close Myrotvorets? Do you think they will give your passport back to you?
Two different scope and scale questions. I think that the Ukrainian government is going to be defeated once Trump comes into power, and Myrotvorets will close automatically. Mm-hmm. So will the Center for Countering Disinformation. So will other Ukrainian-run disinformation sites and intimidation operations. It'll be the end of the Ukrainian government as we know it. And that will solve a whole host of issues. As for me as an individual, it's very difficult. The American bureaucracy is a very complicated bureaucracy, and unless there's a specific direction from the president or the attorney general to close a case, these things can go on forever. What's more than likely to happen is that my case will go into a drawer and the drawer will be shut. and they'll just make things very difficult for me. They won't raid my house, they won't arrest me, but it'll be hard to get my passport back and to get the cloud over my head removed. But one never knows. Maybe one day Donald Trump will hear my name, and he'll decide that he'll make a phone call to the Attorney General and say, "What's going on with Ritter? Is there anything there, or was this purely a manufactured case?" And if they look, they'll see it was a manufactured case, and then maybe justice will be done. But I think it's more likely that Myrotvorets will be shut down before I get my passport back.
So your case is more complex than Myrotvorets?
Because my case is about American politics. Myrotvorets is about geopolitics. Geopolitics is always more simple than domestic politics.
Будем ждать, пока закроют сайт.
We'll wait for the website to close, at least that, to hold our breath, at least for this. Have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen the
Itself.
whole movie. I've seen clips of it, yes.
What do you think of what you have seen of those clips? What's your impression?
Well, first of all, it's very professionally done. Congratulations for getting such a high quality team to do your story. That alone makes it more valuable than you can possibly know. Sometimes if you don't get that kind of quality put into it, even if the content is compelling, people won't look, but the quality alone attracts people. The story is compelling. First of all, I know your story, so I wasn't learning something new. I was seeing it in a compelling, told in a compelling fashion. You are a legend, and this movie helped make you and your story legendary. And to achieve this at such a young age is an amazing gift that you've been given. You have your whole life to live ahead of you, and you've been given a head start that many of your peers don't have. Name recognition, a compelling story, a just cause. This movie will help you and be a burden to you at the same time. It will help you because, again, it is a compelling story told beautifully and in great production. It will burden you because it has set a high bar, and you have to live up to that standard now. And as you go on in life, you're going to find that life doesn't always cooperate, and it's going to be a lot of work to maintain that high bar. But again, that's a problem most of the world would love to have. And you've been handed a gift by the people who believe in you and who have come together to make this movie. And I hope you appreciate it as much as we appreciate you and your courage and your story.
Спасибо огромное. Будем
Thank you so
стараться.
much. We'll do our best, for sure.
Спасибо огромное за уделенное время.
Thank you so much for finding this time for Faina. We
I
shall.
apologize for the
No problem.
confusion. Yeah. I saw
No problem.
her post. It said 3 o'clock. I went, okay, 3 o'clock. Так точно.
Yeah.
Я буду.
Так точно, так точно.
Я понял. Всегда готов.
Мы обнаружили, что на ресурсе были данные 327 детей. Дети находились там по разным так называемым статьям. Это не только российские дети, там были дети граждане Украины, Азербайджана, Армении, 5 стран, в которых мы нашли деток.
Ребенок в европейском списке, который пропагандирует насилие в ее отношении. На самом деле, это одна из самых шокирующих историй. И я считаю, что это экстремистский веб-сайт. Чтобы он публиковал такие списки, пропагандирующие насилие против детей, для меня это слишком. Она не единственный подросток. И она не первый подросток, оказавшийся там. Но она единственный подросток, который попал туда, потому что призывал к миру.